Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Hi, good morning. Rob Browne here with you on this Friday edition of Sidelines. Got a great lineup as always. Going to start off with Riley Gaines, All-American swimmer, SEC Scholar Athlete of the Year in 2022. And loving to swim myself. I bet she's been up since about 4:15, 4:30, going to workouts and training. As she probably will never stop swimming. And wait till her kids, they're going to be born in the pool. They're going to love swimming. But looking forward to having her on. Got a ton of respect for her. Ben Troupe is going to be on here with us as well. Ben, of course, Gator All-American, 5 years in the NFL, and we're going to bring him on here with us. Second segment, Doug Dean, as soon as he can join us. AU Dose in Birmingham checks in. Top of hour number 2, Mr. College Football, Tony Barnhart checks in. We're going to recap the SEC spring meetings along with Bo Carter, the National Baseball Writers Association, National Football Foundation, formerly with the Big 12 office. He'll be out in Dallas. In the Metroplex. So we got a lot to cover here today, folks. And want to get, before we get going, is you think about this, what is happening in the world of sports, and there's nobody better. And I'm going to go ahead and bring on Ben and Riley, but we are here 6 days a week, 8 to 10 a.m. Central. Join us, 50 hours a month of content, and we're a sports radio show and podcast, and what we do is we talk about sports. We get the best people, the best guests that are out there. And Riley, what I remember the most about you is back in 2021, I'm an Auburn grad in the interest of full disclosure. Ben is a Florida Gator. I remarried. My wife is and I saw your reaction, Vol for life.
No.
So, yeah, exactly. But I remember in 2021, and thank you so much for taking time to join us. We really appreciate it. Got a ton of respect for what you're doing. I've got kids, one that's 23, one that's 24, a daughter that's 27, and a daughter that's 34. So I got 2 of each. Love what you're doing. Don't stop. And our listeners, we want to help and get behind what you're doing. But I remember back in 2021, Kentucky won the women's SEC swimming title. And, I can remember watching Rowdy Gaines. And the first question I had was, and I've had about 1 million people ask me, is this Riley Gaines' daughter? Because he was my hero swimming growing up. Mark Spitz was there, and he was awesome. But Riley Gaines from Winter Haven was our guy. But anyway, thanks for joining us. And let's get started right now. You are the national champion swimmer, no doubt about it. We're going to get you your own medal. You should have had it a long time ago, but I have so much respect for you at 22, getting out there and taking on the people and saying, hey, what's right is right, what's wrong is wrong. So, hey, let's get going.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for having me on, really. I will say that Rowdy and I, we are 6 cousins. Okay. Weirdly enough, I don't even know what that means, but his wife is super into genealogy, and I've known him through swimming, of course, for a long time. And finally, at that last NCAA championships, he said, I have to figure out if we're related. I'm sick of people asking me. And so he did a test, and we're 6 cousins, almost impossibly enough. So,
yeah, man, look, you're an incredible swimmer. I mean, 12-time NCAA All-American, 5-time SEC champion, SEC record holder in the 200 butterfly. That was what you used to do in swimming as punishment, was do the butterfly, and to do 200 in the butterfly. Anytime I've ever injured a shoulder, butterfly actually will pop it back into place. Now, Ben, I don't know if you like swimming.
No, ain't nobody doing no, butterfly is what you do. You're trying to die in the pool. That's what butterfly is. That's not, don't listen to Rob or Riley. Butterfly is for people who are skilled. If you're trying to die in the pool or what does drowning feel like? Try to do a butterfly. Try to go in there, bring your whole body out. That's going to last about maybe 1.5 seconds. And if you at LA Fitness or the YMCA, those aren't real, lifeguards, man. They just there to blow the whistle, and they're going to blow the whistle. So, Riley, I'm going to stick to watching you going swim, man, compared to my son used to swim. And, I jumped in there with him one time. He's like, Dad, let's do the butterfly. Needless to say, that was our last time in the pool together. It's a different level of skill. I thought certain sports are grueling, and swimming is one of them. Full body sports is swimming, man. You got to get your mind right.
No
Yeah, and
doubt.
swimming, you think about it, Riley. I mean, growing up from what you decided about age 10 or 11, 4:15, 4:30, you're up. Your mom or dad is sitting there reading the paper, working on their iPad, watching you swim. I know the drill. My daughter was a lifeguard at the Y. Her first day on the job, she jumped off thinking somebody was drowning when they were floating on their back, and they'd kind of dozed off. But let's talk about you. This is what it's about. Your career, how this all started, because I remember it, and then what you're doing to make this right, because we want to help you.
Absolutely. A little bit about me. I'm from Tennessee, and you're right, Rob. I hate to hear Evolve for Life because my dad, he played football at Vanderbilt. Um, so we don't like that orange
Yeah.
school in Tennessee. But right here from Tennessee, I started swimming when I was 4. Of course, I graduated college. I went to University of Kentucky. I graduated at 22. So I dedicated 18 years of my life to my sport. Ultimately, my junior year of high school, I was very fortunate to be very heavily recruited. Actually, Ben, I swore up and down I was going to be a Florida Gator my whole life. Took my trip to Florida, and it just didn't feel like home. And that's ultimately when I took my trip to Kentucky, and I fell in love with the university, the team, the coaches, the atmosphere, the resources outside of just athletics. I was so drawn to it. And so on a whim, I committed. My college experience was nothing short of crazy anyways, because we dealt with COVID my sophomore year. So we were robbed of an NCAA championships my sophomore year. In March of 2020, that's when we were supposed to go to, and of course, that's the meet you train all year for. We were supposed to leave 3 days before we were supposed to go to that national championships. The world essentially shuts down and we got sent home. And so we got sent home. There was no pools. There's no gyms open. And so I every day swam in the lake aimlessly for miles. I put on a wetsuit because I knew this is what I had to do if I wanted to continue improving. Ultimately, we come back that next season. That was when we won our first SEC championship as a team at University of Kentucky. First time in school history. That was probably my favorite swimming memory so far. And ultimately at that national championships, I finished 7th in the country, but I knew I could do more. And so I set my goal right then and there to become a national champion. My senior year, things are getting geared up, and about middle of our season, I'm ranked 3rd in the country behind one amazing female swimmer who I knew very well, and one swimmer who was ranked 1st in the country who I'd never heard of before, which is rare because we all know each other. If you're competing at that top level, you know each other regardless of where you swim, what you swim, where you grew up. It doesn't matter because you've grown up competing against each other across the country. But this person in first I'd never heard of before. And this is, of course, the first time I became aware of a swimmer named Leah Thomas. Ultimately, of course, at the time, I had no idea that this wasn't a biological female. Until a few days after these nation-leading times were posted, an article came out disclosing that Leah Thomas was formerly Will Thomas and swam 3 years on the men's team at University of Pennsylvania before deciding to transition to the women's team. Ultimately, I was able to look up then who Will Thomas was because I was curious if this was a dominant male swimmer, to which that was very quickly proven to be not the case. When Leah was competing as Will Thomas, he was ranked 462nd in the country at best among the men, to now trailing the women. And so I thought the NCAA would see it how I saw it and wouldn't allow Thomas to compete with us as women, but the NCAA saw nothing wrong with it. And so that first day of competition, we watched as Leah Thomas swam to a national title in the 500 freestyle, beating out Olympians, American record holders, the most impressive female swimmers this country has ever seen by body lengths. And so that next day of competition, the second day, that's ultimately when Thomas and I raced. And almost impossibly enough, we tied. We went the exact same time down to the 100th of a second. And so upon tying, we get out of the water, we go behind the podium where the NCAA official looks at both Thomas and myself and says, "Great job, but you guys tied. And we only have one trophy, and we're giving this trophy to Leah. Riley, you have to go home empty-handed." And I, of course, questioned this. Why? And when I asked why, they told me, well, Leah has to have the trophy for photos. Riley, you can pose with this one, but again, you have to give it back. You go home empty-handed. Thomas takes the trophy. And that's ultimately what thrusted me into this public position of acknowledging how it's wrong and it's unfair and it's harmful to women's sports to allow men into our sports and into our locker rooms.
I mean, unimaginable. And I still remember when that happened. Lee Thomas, Will Thomas, whatever this person is what, 6'3", 6'4"?
Yeah, 6'4".
I saw a picture of y'all at the podium, and I just, you know, you've got the tail wagging the dog here now. I mean, and what did your mom and dad? Your mom, was an athlete. I think she played at my mother-in-law lives up in Clarksville. She played at Austin P. Your mom played softball up here. I remember your dad and your uncle Chris all at Vanderbilt. A lot of my family went to law school at Vanderbilt, and my head's about to explode. Ben, take over. I can't take it.
Yeah, Riley, I was going to ask, I mean, what goes on in the person's mind? You finally won, right? You finally won. And they're telling you, they don't even give you guys a choice. I think in the Olympics, they had two high jumpers that trained with each other that both won the gold. They had to give them both a gold. They tell you, no, it's only one. You know, Riley, you have to take a picture with it, but they get like, what goes on in your mind, especially when robbed ain't even a word. I don't even know if there's a word to describe, because the NCAA, the little power that they have, you get to take a picture with it but give it back. That doesn't sound like, and I'm guessing that the people that make trophies can make two. Like if you got to wait, say, oh, send me mine later. No, you're not gonna get one. What goes on through your mind in that moment?
I got the message loud and clear that the NCAA, what they were trying to say, the message they were sending, not just to me, but to every girl, every female athlete, all the past female athletes who fought for Title IX, of course the present female athletes, but also the future female athletes. And that message was that we didn't matter. The message was that what mattered to them were the feelings and the identity and appeasing this biological male at the expense of our feelings, at the expense of our privacy and our safety and our opportunities. That's the message that I got. And so it's mind-blowing to see the NCAA. They pride themselves on equity. They pride themselves on Title IX and the advancement for women in sports. But they don't really care about that. If they did, they wouldn't have allowed this to happen. They wouldn't have allowed us to be forced to undress in front of this man. That doesn't send us a message that we matter or that they care about us. So this whole thing, it made me realize, really, when they reduced everything that I had worked my entire life for down to a photo op, it made me realize that that's what this is. That's what this whole thing is. It's a photo op. They're hoping to push this narrative without care for who it's really harming. And of course, who it's really harming is us as women.
Riley, what is a typical workout week for you? 30 in college, 35, 40,000, 50,000 yards?
Definitely more than that. We were
wow.
swimming. Yeah, we were swimming nearly 15,000 yards every day. So you swim almost 10 miles every single day. You swim 6 hours in the pool every single day. And that's not to mention the weight training you do. That's not to mention your diet, your sleep schedule, the physical rehabilitation you have to do. And it's surely not to mention the social sacrifices you have to make. It's impossible to put into words, really what the dedication that you have to compete at that level. That meet we were swimming at was the fastest meet in the world. I qualified for the Olympic trials, both in 2016 and 2020. It's an understatement to say my world revolved around my sport and my faith. That's really what I found a lot of my identity in. And so now that I'm done, I found it to be a really hard adjustment back to normal life, because now no workout feels as if it's enough. This morning, I already woke up. I went to F45. I did the 5 a.m. class, and then I went and ran 5 miles afterwards, because I still just don't feel like I'm achieving as much as I was when I was swimming. So it's a hard realization. Well, it's hard, of course, when you're doing it, but it's a hard transition when you're done as well.
You know, I mean, you think about that, Ben. You played 5 years in the NFL. the competition at that level. And Riley, I just know that the swimmers, out of the swimmers at Auburn, typically their GPAs are 3.5, 4.0 because you're swimming before class, you're swimming after class, and then you obviously your diet and the weight training. It's your life. And the swimming parents, they live at the pool. The Memphis Tigers. I mean, that's a big swim program, and we've been sharing space with them for the last 2.5 years while they redid their facility. But swimming, real athletes don't wear shoes, do they?
Ben, I won't even answer that because if I did, my dad would kill me, and my little brother who's playing college football.
We don't wear
would
shoes.
kill
We
me.
wear cleats. So
Hey, there you go.
Right, they ain't shoes.
But you know that swimming bumper sticker, Riley.
Oh yeah, for sure. I know all the swimming bumper stickers. There's some unique ones, but no, you're absolutely right. It's I think typically people don't think of swimming as this intense sport. Of course, there's no physical contact. It's not something that requires a lot of coordination, shall we say, but it does still require, of course, an amazing amount of dedication. So it's a different perspective, of course, than your typical sports where you have to jump and you have to run fast and you have to be strong. All of those things still apply, but in a different capacity when it comes to swimming.
Yeah, let's do this. Let's take a quick break because there's a bunch of stuff with you. You were talking about, I know you're going to dental school. I mean, you've put that on hold to fight this, and dental school is not easy. I've got several friends on the board of UT Dental School, and I don't know where you're going to dental school, but I'm going to tell you something. Okay, there you go. Let's talk about it. We're going to be right back with Riley Gaines, Ben Troupe, Rob Browne on this Friday edition of Sidelines after this commercial message.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Riley, we definitely want to help you with that because my dentist is, what is he? I guess he's the president of the board. So we definitely want to help. I think it's fantastic. And to go, you're never going to stop working out. That's what I love. I mean, I got a daughter that and her husband, son-in-law, are so into this stuff. I love what you stand for, and it is fantastic. And you've got, where does your brother play college football?
He goes to Lindsey Wilson, which is a smaller school in Kentucky.
Yeah. And bottom line is, I know from being in business, and you know this, Ben, hiring athletes who played in college. I don't care what it's, D1, D2, D3. And I don't know if I'm biased. I'm not some great swimmer, but I just remember when I was old enough to say hello, getting dumped off at 6:15 or 6:30 every morning in the summer at the pool. And we had a Navy frogman, Navy SEAL that was our coach, Gordon Browne. And it's the best sport in the world. I'm not biased. I just think that it offers so many benefits. You couldn't graduate from Auburn when I started there unless you passed the swim test. And also back in the day, football coach Shug Jordan, you were required to, in the off season, either swim or wrestle or do both. That's how important swimming is. But Ben, I know you got questions for Riley, and then Riley, there's got a lot of people want to ask you some stuff. But anyway, go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, Riley, I got to ask. I mean, obviously, I saw when you went to San Francisco on the campus, and America is different. When you stand up for something that you believe in, it's a lot of people that support you. that's afraid to be, very boisterous with it or out loud. What have you learned in your journey of not just fighting for women's in sports, women's spaces in general? What have you learned about America in general? Because yeah, they celebrate you as an athlete, but you say, number one, I don't think you're transphobic. I think these things are just crazy because when did disagreement become phobia? Like I said, look, so if I don't like your shirt, am I phobia? It's craziness. But what have you learned about America, just speaking out, and you're speaking for more than yourself?
Absolutely. First and foremost, you're exactly right. I never thought recognizing biology would turn into bigotry. Biology is not bigotry, and hate speech is not just speech you hate. And that's what I'm realizing. I've been so eye-opened to how the media works, how the political sphere works, what really goes on in corporate America in terms of course, we've seen Target, Bud Light, we've seen all of this. I've just been so eye-opened, of course, again, spiritually. I've seen so evidently how our God works, and I've seen so evidently how his opposition works. So this past year, I have had to mature. I have had to gain wisdom. I've had to gain security in being able to take the arrows that I take. You're right. I get called every name in the book, but guess what? Acknowledging that there are two sexes and acknowledging that you cannot change your sex, you cannot change your chromosomes, that doesn't make you hateful. That doesn't make you any of the phobias, any of that silly stuff. It just makes you someone rooted in the truth, which is, before anything, I want to live a Christ-like life, and I want to stand firm in the truth. And that's what I'll continue doing. I'll take all the arrows I can take in regards to what happened at San Francisco State. I would take a right hook for Mike Tyson if it meant standing firm in the truth. That's just not something I'm willing to be unwavering from, whether that's biological reality, objective truth, the biblical truth. I'm not going to waver from that. It's just not me. I'm so fortunate to have had such a strong family foundation growing up. I had parents who instilled that in me. And I as you mentioned earlier, Rob, my sport instilled that in me. It is so much more than just the athletic achievement that you get out of sport. There was an Ernst & Young study that came out not too long ago that said 94% of female executives, C-level executives, were female athletes. And I truly accredit my sport to my leadership, my confidence, my security in doing exactly what I've been doing this past year and a half.
Well, I can tell you, volunteer coaching 14 years cross country and track and field, 600 plus kids. My 3 for 9 of those years, coaching females in that middle school is 10 times easier than coaching boys. That was like herding confetti, in a windstorm. But the swimmers, I just think about my daughter when she swam. The first time she swam backstroke, and I didn't know she could do it, and she won her heat. But swimming, it's the best thing. Hey, you know this. You get there, somebody gets sick or gets hurt, you got to swim the 200 medley when you're 7 or 8 years old. You can't back down. You got to do it. And confidence in water is confidence in life. And, like I said, our dentist, Stewart, is the head of the Tennessee Dental Association. So any help that we can give you with dental school, and I hope they're holding your spot for you, because you're going to be great at whatever you do. Like Ben said, and I think about, his whole life is not, hey, I played football. It's who he is as a man. And I love how you put God first in everything you do. I mean, that's my morning prayer, is always put God first in everything you do. And that is your rock. And Riley, I go back and I look at what happened to you at San Francisco State University. I cannot imagine that happening at any school in the South, for sure. What in the world were those people wanting from you? I mean, you're not, you're fair. You're first class. And you don't say anything about it. You're just saying women's rights. Coach Tuberville, we have him on the show, and I hope you've talked to Tommy Tuberville, the senator from Alabama. Good, because we want to support you. Title IX was put in 51 years ago, and all I hear is crickets. Where are these people? What female athletes are standing up for you? Who in the world out there, other than I think Bethany Thomas, that she lost her arm in a shark attack? Isn't she? She's a surfer. Isn't she coming out now fighting
Yes.
for you?
Yes. She's been phenomenal. We now have Sam Ponder and Sage Steele from ESPN who have been really, really influential in this whole process. We have Martina Navratilova, who is a tennis player who is, of course, she's world class, renowned, phenomenal.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about her is she's a lifelong, liberal. We could
Yeah.
not agree on a lot of other issues, yet she sees the importance of protecting women's sports. So more and more people are jumping on ship. We, as you mentioned, Ben, you said I'm speaking for so much more than just myself, and that couldn't be more true. But now I have people standing alongside me, which is powerful.
Well, I gotta ask this. I mean, one of my favorite movies is Man on Fire. When I'm sitting there watching Denzel Washington tell Dakota Fanning, he said, "Listen, you are the fastest in the water. You are the slowest to hit the water." He would always say, "Let the whistle gonna set you free." You talked about, man. You said I'll go jump in the lake with the wetsuit, and I'll still go run 5 miles. I still don't think I've done enough. What does swimming mean to you now? You're an athlete, well accomplished, but now when you no longer got that stress of I got to beat this person next to me or the other person I heard about, what does swimming mean to you now, especially with the new identity you have speaking out for so many?
I just realized how much I really took it for granted when I was doing it. How much I took those opportunities and just, I of course appreciated them in the moment, but not as much as I think I would have now, knowing what it's like not competing anymore. So it's weird. I still swim some. I do triathlons a lot now, and that's I've kind of transitioned there because I still do love competing. I still love to win, to be totally honest. I love winning. Who doesn't? Hate losing more than I love winning, which is, I think, a big part in my success. And I'm sure you guys can understand that, being athletes yourself. But it's instrumental. It really is. My little sister now, she's a gymnast and she is the Tennessee state champion. She's phenomenal. And so I constantly now, being able to be in the position that I'm in, encourage her to keep going, encourage her to really soak it up, give it everything you got every day. You're at that gym for 3-4 hours a day. Give it everything you have every single minute. And when you leave there, don't think about it, but come back that next day and you better give it your all again. So I have a different perspective now than I did when I was competing, in terms of my appreciation for it. But I'm really just so grateful for all of the opportunities that I had and the success that I had.
Doug Dean in Birmingham, on with Riley Gaines, Ben Troupe, and I. And Doug has 3 daughters himself.
Wow.
Riley, good morning. We're all proud of you, and I hope you can, in America, you can still be extraordinarily proud of a strong, high-character, courageous woman like Riley Gaines. I love that your name sounds like our hero in the Auburn family, Rowdy Gaines. So, and it's great to hear your 6 cousins, but I hope you can be proud of Riley Gaines and still in no way at any point wish ill on Leah Thomas and her opportunity, to enjoy all that America brings in the way of freedom. But I must say the irony is rich and kind of tragic that Title IX for all these years, what are we in the 50th anniversary of it, was about, if nothing else, fairness, level playing field on all fronts for female athletes. And they've had a historic presence in terms of investigating alleged sexual assault, and the list goes on. And the threat to the very mission they began with in Title IX would come from a former male of all things. And it seems like it's the death of common sense. And I guess what I would say is, you certainly have credibility as an athlete to speak on this, but you know who else should have a heck of a lot of credibility? Caitlyn Jenner. And it's well documented what Caitlyn has been through, and it could not be more outspoken, adamant about essentially exactly your viewpoint. Your comments on all of that, Riley.
Absolutely. I think Caitlin has a very interesting but very valued experience, and someone who truly understands gender dysphoria, because that's not something I could possibly fathom, because it's not something that I've ever had to struggle with. So Caitlin understands the dysphoria surrounding this delusion, but also has valued experience as a world-class athlete, and understands again the value of sports and what that means. I think, of course, when Caitlin was competing as Bruce, he knew, of course, there was no woman in that Olympic Games who could have kept up with him, who could have competed and been successful alongside with him. And he knew that. And now, again, understanding both sides of this, and still comes out and says that this is wrong. Women deserve protection. Us as trans women, we're really just a subset of biological men. We cannot change our structure. We cannot change our biology. And I think it's really powerful to have someone who, again, understands both sides still come out in support of women and protecting women in sports and women's spaces.
Yeah, and I would add that, and as we compliment you, Riley, I don't want to put this burden on you, but it seems evident to even a casual observer that if you so desire, I think you have a bright future in the political arena. I'm not sure that would be a reward, quite frankly.
Yeah, I don't know either at this point.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're what about dental school and your next step? But before I get to that, I got to ask you, when you've been to Washington, I admire your fight, and Ben and Doug and I, we all agree with that. And there are a lot of people up there. The terms of endearment follow the money trail, Riley, and that's what a lot of these people, they're afraid of their sponsors. You know what? You got to do what's right. Your honor is dearer than your life.
No doubt. No doubt. That's something that I, again, just never want myself to get caught up in. I've stayed true to my mission, again, my entire life, but especially this past year, in terms of speaking out and standing firm for what I believe to be true, what I know is the truth, and there is only one truth, and standing firm in that. I've seen very evidently with my own eyes how money sways things, how money sways people, which affects the people in this country. We're putting our leaders in a position of the power that they have is of course chilling. And so you have to elect people who are willing to do the right thing, who won't be swayed, who stand firm again in the truth and are unwavering in what they know to be right and what they know to be fair. It's this political sphere, it's cutthroat, and these people on both sides, they participate in the shenanigans.
Yeah. And it's tough. Let people know the causes and how they can, that you are supporting your fight, and how they can lend their support to you. And we definitely want to have you back on again. Didn't mean to keep you so long, but you're such it's so refreshing to see somebody your age. You're braver than, most of the American men in this country. I mean, I don't know what's happened, but I mean, you got a dad like you do and a mom like you do. God has blessed you with a lot of gifts, and you're blessing everyone by fighting. I just wish that more high profile female athletes, and it's starting to happen, that's good, would come out and have your back, because as a teammate, if you're on a relay, there's 4 of you. You may not be feeling it that day, but you better be feeling it for those other 3, because you're going to remember it 60, 70, 80 years from now. You're going to be sitting around with kids and grandchildren remembering that I give everything I got. And you're doing it. You're taking your athletic career, which is who you are, is Riley Gaines, but you're fighting just like you are for that last half an inch or 100th of a second to win. And again, we're going to get you a trophy. Ben and Doug and I are going to get you a trophy. You're the national champion. I can't imagine, but let people know how they can support you and get behind you.
Absolutely. My Twitter, which is where I try to post breaking stories surrounding this issue and this affecting women and girls, as well as highlighting how different politicians are responding, whether that be good or bad. My Twitter is Riley_Gaines_. And I just wanted to thank you for having me on. And anytime, I'll be back. So,
Rob, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Riley, before my cousin, speaking of cousins, young lady, she's graduated now, Anna Granger, Nashville Proc. She got a scholarship to Notre Dame. Try as we may, we tried to get her to Auburn, but she came close on Olympic trials. But the point is, the beauty of this sport, that helped her get a prestigious degree from Notre Dame, just like you did at Kentucky. So did you ever happen to run into Anna Granger in your days?
I most certainly did, because we competed against Notre Dame at every single midseason meet. So absolutely I did.
That's great.
Well,
All the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Riley, look, man, thank you so much. Ben, hang with us. Doug, we're going to be right back. I know you've got a full day ahead of you, but definitely want to help if we can with dental school, UT in Memphis, whenever you get started. I'm going to send you something after the show, but thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. We'll be right back with more on Sidelines. All right, Rob Browne back here. Ben Troupe in ESPN Coastal down in Savannah. Doug Dean in Birmingham. And really enjoyed having Riley. We all three have daughters. Doug has 3. You've got 2, Ben. I have 2 now when I've remarried to Audrey. And she went to Alabama and still claim her. And, of course, Doug's got twins. One went to Auburn, one went to Alabama. So you know how that world has been. But I love how Riley is focused. And she'll never stop working out. But she'll go to dental school, and I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but she will be prepared for the task. That is a guarantee, Ben.
Absolutely. I think the thing about Riley that people don't give her enough credit for is most of us are 22 years old trying to figure out life, trying to figure out what am I going to do with the rest of my life. And our voices have never been amplified like that. And, I ain't get a chance to ask you, the whole notion of it's not what you say, it's how you say it. No, today's world is who you saying it about. What group are you talking about? Because, and the thing about Riley is, I think over this process, she didn't get to say it because you didn't really get to dive into it. Of course, there's going to be days she wish she didn't say it. Of course, there's going to be days I wish I just kept my mouth shut. But then she realizes, well, if I don't speak, who's gonna say anything? Title IX in college athletics, it needs a renovation bad. Because at the end of the day, if it's not helping the ones it was put in place for, what is it for? Like, what are we talking about? And it's almost like saying, so let me get this straight. A young lady who spent her whole life to get to this point, tied with a trans woman, right? And she was told, oh no, you're not getting it, Riley. And she and mind you, and once again, I'm gonna say this again, disagreement is not phobias. Disagreeing with certain groups doesn't make you homophobic, Islamophobic, transphobic. Disagreement is disagreement. Like, we just have a disagreement. We don't see eye to eye. It's like, Rob, you're married. Do you disagree with your wife? Am I wife-ophobic? No.
Never.
Disagree. Because good Lord, because we're going to disagree every day, right?
Yes.
But I think what happens is Riley realizes that the world she thought it was is not the world out there. It is not what you thought when they cheering for you and all these different things. But I do applaud her for just standing firm, because I think she realized along the way, man, the days I don't feel like it, I think about the young ladies who's coming behind me. Because I will say that, having 2 daughters and understanding how, incredible it is to watch them go out there and compete. I don't care how great I don't care what gene pool my daughter comes from. She can't compete with guys. It's just, and these are true statements. And it's like, the truth is something that's really, really frowned upon these days. As soon as you say it, people go, oh my God, did you hear what he or she's just said? Like, yeah, it's like, it's the truth. It's like somebody say, hey man, if I said, water is wet. What do you mean water is wet? People are going to debate that. I'm like, well, it is.
Yeah.
And I think that what Riley is realizing, if she stops, you know, because like you said, Rob, she's passing the baton to somebody. At a certain point, she's going to pass it to somebody else, and I don't know if they're going to ever get to the finish line, but like I said before, you know, when it comes to certain issues in America, especially in collegiate sports, why are we trying to act like we got this thing, you know, we know everything there is to know? The people who don't compete should not get to make decisions for the people that do. Because you're making decisions for people, and most love them. Most athletic directors did not compete like that. Now, the John Hartwells of the world, they did. But these chancellors and these commissioners, and they're making decisions for young ladies. I'm like, well, dude, they're still scratching and clawing to even get the same notoriety as the guys. And you telling me when I finally won, you're going to tell me, no, Riley, you get to take a picture. It's going to go to Leah. And this is nothing against Leah. Leah Thomas, nothing against Leah Thomas. Listen, it's almost like I'm straddling the fence. I'm for both, but I also got to understand, wait a minute. If LeBron James showed up to the WNBA, what are we going to say? Doug, LeBron James is starting tonight. He's going to score 100 points. He is.
By the halftime.
But we act like these are outliers. Caitlyn Jenner is an outlier. Leah Thomas is an outlier, but you're giving them all this leeway. And like I said, I have nothing against transgender men and women. I support their fight and whatever they're hoping to do. But just because I want to be in a space doesn't mean I get to, just because it was approved. Because if it was the other way around, like you notice, when it comes to transgender sports, the men aren't complaining. So trans men that want to come up, guys ain't complaining, but come on, man. Bone density, puberty, these things got to be factored in. I am for transgenders in sports. I am. But the whole thing about it is, if I was ranked 460 something in the world, and I go from that to number one, I mean, you know, it's just a sense of unfairness there. I don't know what the end result is going to be, but if you can't respect, Riley Gaines, not a swimmer, the premier swimmer in women college athletics, I think that's a bad look. I really do.
Yeah. Doug, you might be muted. Doug, you've muted yourself.
My bad.
Yeah, sorry.
Ben, thank you, Rob. We get by with a little help from the producer here. And
that
red dotted mic button means something. It means I'm deaf to the listener. Anyway, Ben, the thing that's frustrating is, as you've so well and so passionately put just now, and you did so without one single ounce of venom or hate for Leah Thomas or people in the trans circumstance of life. None of that. But the death of this book about American life in the last little while should be titled "The Death of Common Sense."
Yeah.
And for example, this analogy is not perfect, but that for decades, every sport, and some more than others, swimming's a good example, have been heavily regulated in terms of drug screening and performance enhancing drug testing. Am I right? And so that is, why do they do that? Well, they want to make sure that no swimmer, whether it's the male or female side, college or Olympic level swimming, had an unfair physiological performance advantage, right? Well, how is Leah Thomas's transition to female and then her allowed competition and went female swimming in college anything but? The only way to view it fairly, objectively, is that Leah Thomas walked in with an unfair physical advantage, and it didn't have to do with performance enhancing drugs, but it had to do with native physiology, just like Ben has talked about. And if an individual, the problem is all these ideologues have tried to push their agenda into college sports.
Yeah.
And I think, like I said, the most relevant voice that either side, if they're fair, and they of course won't be fair, if either side wants a fair voice to listen to, a good place to start would be Caitlyn Jenner, who certainly has the personal ability to understand both sides of this.
Yeah, and I agree with it. I did hear Riley in one of her previous interviews say that Kentucky Athletic Director Mitch Barnhart has been fully behind her and had her back and is supporting her in her fight, which I think is critical. The Southeastern Conference, she said, has been good. But, Bill Bennett wrote a book years ago called The Death of Outrage. Tammy Bruce wrote a book called The Death of Right and Wrong. There is a right and there's a wrong. I remember the old Jiminy Cricket parables. They were hilarious. There's a right way to do things and there's a fool's way. Don't do things the fool's way. That's where we are. All right, let's switch gears now, guys. Ben, you mentioned the word football. I mean, he is just in competition. But Ben, you are your mind is amazing. You and I were talking, Doug. We were driving back from Memphis yesterday, and I called Ben. We were over at the Nigel's house talking about the show today, and the competition. What's going on in college football and all, and Ben, you look at it. You played at Florida, and of course, I love that Auburn-Florida rivalry. We played y'all every year. Well, the first couple of years you were at Florida, first 3, and then it changed. But Doug, what are your thoughts about the SEC meetings? Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football, will be on with us in about 15 minutes to talk about those spring meetings down in Destin. But are you a 1-7 or a 3-6 guy? What are you? And then Ben, I want your thoughts after Doug.
Yeah, I mean, really, I'm not going to be a fence sitter because people don't come in here on your show, listen to your show.
No.
I don't know. Well, it depends. Have an opinion, and it might be wrong a week. But my opinion is, in the long run, I think that it's indefensible not to go to 9 games. And my rationale is not simply to preserve historic rivalries. When we expanded to these super conferences like we have and is underway and is still evolving, it was essentially a decision that there would be a trade-off. Some of the historic rivalries would probably have to be played less frequently. But, just from Riley Gaines and that whole discussion, part of the tragedy of that, wait for it, Ben, I'm coming after you. We should be talking this morning with the 8 SEC game ruling, which will hopefully just be 1 year by time. The Florida Gators are still trying to dodge playing the Auburn Tigers, Rob. Am I right? And,
They are not.
yeah.
No way.
You know what I can appreciate about Doug? Doug looks at Rob and goes, Doug says it's either you're going to ask me about Florida Auburn or I'm going to sneak it in. I don't care.
That's right.
I'm going to get it. I will say this about Florida Auburn, right? I am not this Florida LSU thing. I mean, I played LSU in college, but it's not Florida Auburn. And the reason why I say it is because at the end of the day, being a Georgia native, you go to Atlanta, there are more Auburn billboards in Atlanta than Georgia Tech. It's all billboards everywhere. So and I think even with the 8 game stuff, I think the thing is Greg Sankey is very, very crafty, people. He knows what he's doing. It happened again. Nick Saban didn't win the national championship, a.k.a. he's going to pout about something. He's going to get mad. Oh, we don't need it. So it's going to look like I'm catering to Nick. He's not. This is 2024. I guarantee you this. When those 2 schools from the Big 12 come over, it's not going to be 8 anymore. It's going to be 9. Just because how else are you going to explain bringing over Oklahoma and Texas without going to 9 games? Now, when it comes to out-of-conference games, I don't know what that's going to mean with those type of games, but because what the SEC will do, it's going to be more of a, LSU versus Clemson, LSU versus Oklahoma State, because now you can lose games and still get in the college football playoff, which is ultimately what it's about. But for people going crazy about the 8 games, look, Greg Sankey, he's just playing possum, man, and he's really, really good at it.
Yeah, and the thing is, my motive, my criteria is not original, but I think this is the prevailing thought of the power brokers in the end. If you want competitive fairness, which was a theme of the first half hour of your show, Rob, then you've got to have it designed so that no particular SEC school can go 2 and 3 years dodging Georgia, Alabama, LSU, and Florida will be back. Tennessee's on their way back. Auburn will be back. But you pick the top half most dreaded opponents in the SEC. We need to all, to the extent possible, be playing every other team as frequently as possible. And maybe that means the SEC championship game goes away eventually because the TV money will be there to do that if they want. And then the other thing is you've got I'm going to be bummed, frankly, that it makes it less likely that SEC schools like Auburn are going to want to schedule a Notre Dame or a USC or a powerhouse at Oregon out of non-conference game, because you're just asking too much to try to make a 12-team playoff with that kind of gauntlet.
And that, look, the other day I said I like that 1-7 versus 3-6 because in the case of Auburn, maybe it gives them. There are no easy routes in this league, and I'm going to go back and say I don't think I had enough sugar. My blood sugar level had dropped, and I had a momentary lapse of sanity. There's no way I can go back against what I've always believed. I love the fact that Auburn plays Georgia and Alabama and LSU. I wish we still played Florida and Tennessee. I think there's something to be said about playing a tough schedule. But, man, Auburn, outside of the state of Alabama, of course, and then Georgia, Florida is their biggest alumni base. The Kennedy Space Center was run by Auburn people. The first, if we really went to the moon, there are people here in Arkansas up there in the mountains that don't believe we did. And they thought it was done on the back parking lot of a Walmart over in Winnie, Arkansas. But anyway, I digress. I like that 3-6. And that is just a natural rivalry, Auburn, Florida. I mean, you think about the kids. And Ben, you're from small town. You know what's crazy, Doug? There were 4 kids in his neighborhood that played SEC football. I don't know 4 people I grew. That's unusual. That's great parenting. That's great family support. And that's great genes as well. I mean, look, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Your book, Uncommon and Unfinished, is a great story that everybody ought to read about coming through life. And if you learned anything in sport, the biggest crime would be you to never lose a game growing up. You'd never learn how to fight back, man. And you are a fighter for sure. The conference, we got to go ahead, Doug.
Well, I was just going to say back to the schedule, and this history matters, and Ben will appreciate this reference. Those of us that are looking at, and then some of the ADs are no doubt, and coaches are looking at, all right, which schedule gives us the easiest path to only losing, let's say, one conference game realistically and automatically making the playoff. And the assumption you might be making of, hey, we want to play Mizzou every year, or we want to pick your team that's in that middle tier that you think is an easy W here. Ben will remember from talking to Spurrier and the Florida Gator historians that there was a time when it was laughable to play Florida State. Now that goes back decades. And much like the state of Alabama, Florida, as the flagship university in the early days, really didn't want Florida State to be legitimized with football. And that later changed. And the minute that and it was just at Gainesville for the longest, because the FSU only had a 20,000 capacity stadium. But once you started playing and they got on that stage and Bobby Bowden comes along, all of a sudden that became a 500 winning percentage for both sides. Yeah. So, I would say be careful what you ask for, getting a, quote, easy schedule in the SEC. And I chuckle that the great Nick Saban is whining about having to play Tennessee, Auburn, and LSU. Well, you also get Vanderbilt, coach, and Auburn has never had Vanderbilt every year in our history.
Yeah. Ben, Florida State started playing football in 1948. I guess this will be their 75th anniversary. The other schools in the South had been playing 56 years before that. It took them a while to catch on. But as a Georgia native, you live in Savannah. These rivalries are so big. And obviously we know Auburn, Georgia, February 20th, 1892, Piedmont Park, Atlanta, Georgia, Auburn 10, Georgia nothing. Vince Dooley said, after the game, the Georgia fans were so distraught, they took the goat, who was the mascot, and barbecued him. I guess it was the first tailgate party in the Deep South. But Ben, when you go to Gainesville, And you talk about the LSU rivalry, the Georgia game. They're talking about moving that away. And I'm not going to be a hypocrite because we wanted the game moved from Legion Field to Auburn. Eventually, it led to Tuscaloosa building the gigantic stadium. Do you want to see that rivalry moved out of Jacksonville? Because they're going to move it for a couple of years while they're doing renovations to the stadium. How special is that to you and living in a town like Savannah?
It's huge. It's huge because a lot of times too, you don't realize how big something is, especially when you're a part of it. But when I was in college, man, they said something that even goes now. You got blue bloods and slot fillers, and it's not going to change, right? Auburn is a blue blood. Florida's a blue blood. Tennessee is a blue blood. You got LSU. You got Alabama. And the thing about it is you need the blue bloods to look like it. Like you need them to be, because blue bloods are good for college football, regardless of what a conference they're in. And the thing is, when you talk about, when people start saying, hey, man, what makes college football? Iron Bowl, cocktail party, right? The Red River rivalry, Army, Navy. I know the Georgia fans think it is a home game for Florida, but we get the same number of tickets. And I think the thing about it is it's the pageantry of college football. You don't get rid of it. Now, I will say this. The Red River rivalry, now, when they come over to the SEC, they are already trying to find a way to get it into the Georgia Dome. They're going to try to get it closer to SEC country. Sorry, Brent Venables, you know how it goes over here, even though you went to Oklahoma. But it's the greatest, man, because you are what people set their calendars to. Like, people go crazy for these games. When I was in college, they did a poll of what's the greatest rivalry game. It's the Iron Bowl. It ain't even – I look at Army Navy different.
Close.
I look at Army Navy's different because they plan for something different. This whole state of Florida ain't shutting down for Florida State. No. Auburn, Alabama, that's it. Ain't no what are you doing Saturday? What you mean? What am I doing? What? Yeah. And I got a thing that's gonna be coming out called No Weddings in the Fall. I'm gonna be getting married sometime next year. My fiance, she's not a football person. She goes, why no weddings in the fall? I said, sweetie, don't ask those type of questions. You don't ask those type of questions. But that's how deep rooted we are when it comes to college football. Because I remember I was in California at the time. Andrew Luck was in school. You could still get parking during the game. You can still no. People go no. If you go Auburn could be playing anybody, man. We showed up to the game 5 minutes late. We had to park 10 miles down the road. There is no parking close to the. So, yes, being a part of these great pageantries, I went into the Florida Georgia Game Hall of Fame. Vern Lundquist went in with me. And when my mama saw him, mind you, they don't even know my mama know Vern now. She done pushed me out the way to get to Vern. Because that's how big it is. So, when I met Vince Dooley in real life, I couldn't even talk. We was at the same Florida Georgia golf tournament. I can't even play golf. And he walks up to me, and before I can say, how you doing? He said, so Ben, I'm like, you know me? It's man, get out of here, man. I believe in rivalries. I really, really do. And I think you have to keep those around that's what the fans deserve, regardless of the score.
You got to have the blue bloods. I might get mad at, and Auburn is sort of a quasi blue blood. I appreciate the compliment. We certainly have had an illustrious football resume. It pales in comparison to a few others, but you need a Darth Vader for the movie to be interesting, don't you? What makes Kick Six even like quadruply dramatic is not how it happened, but who it was happening to, the great Alabama, right?
Yeah. And the greatest thing you will ever be asked is this: what would you rather have? Your favorite team win or the team you hate lose? That is the greatest question there is, because think about it like, wait a minute. So you mean I can have, do you rather have Auburn win or Alabama lose? Woo! Man, I've been thinking about that. And so far, it's 50-50.
Yeah. Hey, look, Bo Carter's joining us right now. Now, Bo is from the Quad Cities, Sheffield, Tuscumbia, Muscle Shoals, and Florence, and graduated from Vanderbilt. And then was SID at Mississippi State, went to the Southwest Conference in the Big 12 office. Now he's writer for the National Football Foundation, Baseball Writers of America. You're there in, and I'm going to say it, the Metroplex, Carrollton, Texas. But, Ben was an All-American at Florida. Doug is the AU dose there in Birmingham. And we had Riley Gaines on earlier in the show. And by the way, like I said, my kids are 23 to 34, 2 boys, 2 girls now that I've remarried. And does that not make you feel great about the future of America? That I'm so tired of people ripping on the kids that age, 22 years old, and she is going to be successful in any and everything she does. She's got it. Great parents. But man, what a warrior Riley Gaines is. But Bo, we're talking about these great rivalries, and Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football, should be joining us here in just a minute. He's been at the spring meetings in Destin. Bo, how big are these rivalries? Ben, you weren't even born yet. Maybe you were. 1983, you were there in Starkville. Doug, do you remember this? In the Egg Bowl?
I was born in 82, so I was one.
Okay, in 83, in the Egg Bowl, Mississippi State and Ole Miss, it's unbelievable. Mississippi State goes down there to kick the winning field goal, and a gust of wind comes and blows it back, called the immaculate deflection. Bo, you were in the press box. Did you lose your mind? And what did Jack Crystal say? Oh,
yeah. Well, it's 2 things. I was actually down on the sidelines for the post game, right under the goal post, and it went up, and I said, "Good Lord, what the?" They had a tornado in suburban Jackson last night. And by the way, Ben, we used to always say we'd pull for the Soviets in Moscow against Alabama. That was the whole more Soviet Union. I guess the Russians now. I don't.
Yeah.
No, but Rob was, and then Stan Torgerson, the Ole Miss broadcaster, said, "Well, God must be a rebel because he sure stopped that field goal from going through." And the winner, the winner was going to the Independence Bowl, so it came down to that kick to decide the game.
It is crazy. Listen, Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football, is in with us right now. We've got a great round table going, man. I mean, we are getting the band together. Tony, I know you're mobile. You've been down in Destin. They have those spring meetings in some rough places. I keep saying, how about Minot, North Dakota, or Platte River, Nebraska? But somebody's got to do it. But man, we're talking with Ben Troupe is on here with us. Doug Dean, the AU Dose in Birmingham. Bo Carter out in Dallas. You probably know Bo. But man, what we're celebrating is college football. We had Riley Gaines on earlier in the show. But talk about your takeaway from the spring meetings and what you think is going to be happening after we leave there. And is this just the start of a bunch more meetings?
Well, yeah, it's always the start of a bunch more meetings. I mean, there are meetings talk about the last meeting. Then you have meetings talk about those meetings. Now, it was an interesting process, guys, to watch.
Tony, we're having a little bit of trouble hearing you.
Because when I got to Destin on Monday and had a chance, reasonably convinced that the commissioner wanted.
Yeah.
How about that? Is that better?
Oh, yeah, that's better now. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. When I got here, I felt reasonably certain that we'd walk out of here today with a 9-game conference schedule. But what you find out in the athletics, if you do it long enough, is that you talk about meetings. The more meetings you have, the more questions get raised and the fewer answers you find. And that's kind of where we were. They said, okay, you know what? Let's just do a gap in the gap, stopgap measure. We'll do it for one season. That'll give us time to solve these issues, and maybe that will do it. And so we leave here today with a 2024 schedule that'll be announced on June 14th, and it's going to be interesting to see how many of not the primary rivals, but how many of the secondary rivals are able to keep.
When in those meetings that were there, the presidents came in. I heard Mark Keenum, longtime president. I guess he's the elder statesman in the SEC, and he had a lot to say. But what was your takeaway on reasons for the 1-7 or reasons for the 3-6, and who are the biggest proponents of each?
Well, there are several elements involved, and not the least of which is money. There was an attitude among the athletic directors that, hey, look, if we're going to add, think about this, you add 9 more games, and that's great. That's all good. 9 more conference games. Who doesn't want more SEC football? But you're also adding 9 more losses that you've got to spread around the conference, which makes it more difficult to get to a bowl game. So that's number one. That's an issue. You got coaches like Nick Saban who made it. He's got some. I think he plays Notre Dame down the road, plays Ohio State down the road. He said, if we go to a 9-game conference schedule, I'm going to have to undo some of these games that I've done, and that's going to take time. So I ultimately, if you're going to ask the SEC for 9 additional conference games, there needs to be the money that comes with it. And I don't think that issue, and I know that issue has not been resolved yet.
Interesting. Bo Carter, jump in here with Tony Barnhart and Mr. College Football on these spring meetings and the schedule debate.
Tony, great to hear from you. The main thing, they're going to make Texas and Texas A&M play for the first time in 13 years. So
yeah.
How that rivalry got a lot of egos there, I'm sad to say, but they're going to. I think they said they're going to play the 2024 game anyway.
And here's the thing, Bo, is that with me, the reason I'm an advocate for a 9-game conference schedule, I talked to a Texas person. They said, well, which game would you rather give up on a yearly basis? If you go to an 8-game conference schedule, then you're not going to get to – you want to play Texas and Oklahoma every year. Mm-hmm. You want to play Texas and Texas A&M every year. What's the point of bringing them in the conference? Well, that is the issue. Which one of those games do you want to give up playing on a yearly basis? And I think stuff like – I just think at the end of the day, there were just too many issues that could not get resolved. And I will share this with you. Greg Sankey told me one of the major things he learned during the pandemic was to never make a big decision, and we're talking about big decisions, never make a big decision until you absolutely, positively have to. Mm-hmm. And one of the things he told us on Monday was that time was still on their side. Time was still on and so ultimately I wasn't surprised when the decision was made. I was a little disappointed, but we're going to get to 9 conference games. We're just not going to get there in 2024.
Tony, this is Doug Dean in Birmingham. First of all, I've been a long time admirer of your writing and your opinion, which in this day, I still produce content in written form, but in this day and age, people want live, just like we're doing right now. But I have a question. I think you're uniquely positioned to have a valid opinion on this, using the taking as a proxy for what most every SEC program is thinking about right now, and that is the long-time historic rivalries. And looking, Tony, at the Auburn-Georgia oldest rivalry in the South, do you think that Georgia? I know how Auburn people feel. It's kind of split. We're not. We hadn't held up our end of the bargain with Georgia recently, but that can. But you think Georgia people sincerely value continuing that Auburn-Georgia series, or in light of where things are now, are they also more split?
Well, Dean, you couldn't be surprised to hear the answer is it's generational. Okay, to the old guys like me, the Auburn-Georgia, that is the one game I'm not willing to give up. It means a lot to me, and it always has. I think the Georgia people on balance want to keep that game. They've all got friends who went to Auburn. A lot of Auburn people live in Atlanta, where I live, and so I think that's very, very important. And the bottom line is, if you don't have a 9-game conference schedule, then the Auburn-Georgia game is going to be played every other year, because Georgia's permanent team is going to be Florida. I can give you about 5 million reasons why that's going to happen. So yeah, the Auburn-Georgia game is very, very important to the Georgia people.
Ben, jump in here. You're talking about that Florida-Georgia game.
Yeah, and Tony, I mean, obviously, when you think about the fact that, you talked about premier rivalries and secondary rivalries, they are rivalries that people think are bigger than others. You're obviously going to have some new ones come 2025 when Texas and Oklahoma come over. But which are the ones you think, no matter what happens, you're going to see these two teams play each other, even if you do go to a 9-game schedule?
Oh, well, obviously the in-state rivalries are not going to go away. Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, those games aren't going to go away. All right. The games that I am looking forward to, I hear from Georgia people, they're so excited to be going whenever they get there, when they go to Austin to play Texas, because a lot of people have not been to Austin. It's one of the great venues and great college towns. And and you've got to have you can't go to all of this trouble and not have Texas and Texas A&M every year. I mean, wasn't that kind of the point, guys, that you get that game back as valuable as it is. And so I think those are the ones. I personally would not like to see Tennessee, Alabama go away because I just believe in the tradition. I hate to see Alabama, LSU go away. And if Coach Saban is listening to this, he's getting madder by the minute. But the fact of the matter is, LSU, Alabama is traditionally one of the highest rated games in all of college football every year. And so there are just so many valuable games. I just think from a standpoint of what happens every single year, I just think going to a 9-game conference schedule just makes too much sense.
Yeah.
It really does. And we're better take a break. I got a bunch of I know Bo Carter. I'm going to bring you in here with Tony, and I'm with you, Tony, on the tradition. I thought the other day I had a momentary lapse of sanity. 1-7 is okay, but I'm like, the 3-6. I'm a history, tradition, and heroes guy. And to me, growing up, it was Auburn, Tennessee, Auburn, Florida, Auburn, Georgia, Auburn, Alabama. Those were my games. Growing up in Memphis, Tony, if we lost to Tennessee and we went to the game in Knoxville or Auburn or Birmingham, we came home, there were 50 or 60 smashed oranges left in my driveway by my Tennessee friends. That's part of the fun that makes the tradition so good. And man, I mean, I got oldest daughter now lives over in Atlanta. She's an Alabama grad. Georgia fans everywhere. We'll be right back. Tony Barnhart, Bo Carter, Doug Dean, Ben Troupe, right after this quick break.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, continuing on. Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football, Bo Carter, Doug Dean in Birmingham. Tony, when we talk about these rivalries, and Bo, you know about the tradition. You're a great writer. Again, I tell this to Tony every time, but your writers are typically your best guests because they think about what they're saying. Bo, look at it from your perspective, being long time in the SEC, then to the Southwest Conference, the Big 12. Let's get your weight.
Tony, it's only a matter of time, I guess, till Texas and Oklahoma start another this is about their fourth move since 1996, I guess. So it's tremendous. I think Tony hit the nail on the head. You've got the Auburn-Georgia rivalry. Actually, Mississippi State's Alabama's longest rival because of the discontinuation of the Auburn-Georgia series, Auburn-Alabama series all those years. So you don't want to really see these rivalry. And Tony, they got some tough decisions to make, like you were saying about which ones we're going to split up. Boy, I'm glad I'm not Greg Sankey or whoever the chairman of the ADs committee is this year.
Ultimately, Bo, you have more options if you go to a 9-game conference schedule. On a 1-7 model, your options of maintaining the SEC is kind of unique in that way. We got primary rivals and we got secondary rivals, and they're all big rivals to the people who play in them. You just don't have as many options. And again, guys, don't discount the fact that all this stuff is leverage for the next set of negotiations. I mean, basically what they announced yesterday was a one-year deal for 2024, where you'll have a 1-7 model. You'll get to keep your primary, and some of those secondary rivalries will be maintained. But understand this: yesterday was about announcing what they're going to do in 24 and setting the stage for negotiations for 2025.
Yeah, Doug, man, it's a temporary, but change on the way. Okay.
Yeah, if you're talking about the scheduling, I think I was hard on Commissioner Sankey initially until I took a deep breath and realized that he's trying to herd cats. Am I right? In Miramar, Destin area, and the AD. I'm sympathetic, frankly, to the mid tier or let's say historically, if you look at wins and losses in the SEC, the bottom 50% of our league, which really they're important to the league. They have to be concerned about being bowl eligible. It's we'd all win 11 games every year, but you look at reality and history. I can understand the ADs that are falling more in the vein of an 8-game schedule, which gives them the opportunity to schedule more, shall we say, winnable games.
Well, and keep in mind, if you go to a 9-game schedule, you do the math. You are replacing what would have been now you've only got 3 non-conference games that you can control to try to help your coach get to a bowl game, and that's a real Mark Stoops at Kentucky pointed out, since he's been in the conference, this is his 11th or 12th year, he's seen 23 head coaches get fired. Okay, that's a reality. Mm-hmm. That is a reality. So you've got these competing forces. Listen, guys, not a 14-team SEC, which will soon be a 16-team SEC. Not everybody is playing football at the same level. Let's be honest about that. And as an old coach once told me, he said, where you stand on something like this depends on where you sit. So
yeah, that's right. Tony, do you agree with me that which is not, there's no genius claimed here, but that it will be highly likely, if you look at the strength of the soon-to-be 16-team SEC, that most years, not every year, but a lot of years, a 12-team playoff might include not 2, but a 3-loss SEC team?
That's a very important point, and it's also a point that went into this decision yesterday. I had several athletic directors tell me, said, the College Football Playoff Committee tells us that they're going to take our schedule into consideration when they're handing out postseason bids. But will they really? Okay, we feel confident that an SEC team that with 2 losses can get into the playoffs. But with the people that we're playing, with the conference that we're playing in, what about 3 losses? Mm-hmm. So what if I've got 3 losses and I've lost to number 1 Alabama and number 3 Georgia and number 4 LSU? Those are my 3 losses. Okay, don't I deserve to get into the playoffs? Well, the committee says, well, yeah, but will they really? And I think part of this is let's let the 12-team playoff go for a year. Let's see how that goes. Okay, let's see how much will they weigh the fact that our conference ratings.
And the consideration is going to be that 3-loss SEC team. I love that example, as measured against politically and otherwise a Cincinnati, a Baylor. Baylor might be a bad example. They play a pretty tough schedule, and that it'll be interesting to see how the committee values all of that.
Yeah, well, I just think that was there were so many unresolved questions when they made their decision yesterday, and that was one of them. What will the College Football Selection Committee, Playoff Committee do when the rubber meets the road and it's time to pick the 6 at-larges for that tournament? What will they really do?
Yeah, exactly. Tony, one other thing before you go, the NIL debate, really interesting article Ross Dellinger wrote, SI.com, and John Hartwell sent it to me, and we talked about it on the show yesterday. But every state has a different law, and the power, our Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the preamble, and all, it's all vested in the states. Missouri has a new NIL deal that if you're an in-state kid going to an in-state school, you sign in December, you can immediately start earning money from your name, image, and
Yeah.
likeness. Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas have rules, and then Alabama, Mississippi, and Florida have different ones. Was that brought up much, and was the discussion good, bad, or ugly?
Ugly. It was ugly because if you got 38 states with 38 different sets of rules, how can you have any kind? You can't have any kind of uniformity. You can't have any kind of enforcement. You can't have any kind of regulation. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't, and that's why. And people don't want to hear this, but the fact of the matter, I don't see a solution that does not include federal intervention. Because look, guys, I'm not a lawyer. I raised one, but I'm not a lawyer. Okay, but I do know. I do know a little bit about antitrust law, and I know that if you create a situation in the free market where you restrict my ability to make what I can make on my name, image, and likeness, if you restrict that, it is a classic violation of antitrust law. So to me, the only way to do it is federal intervention, where college athletics gets an antitrust exemption. Baseball had it for years. And so, yeah, that's it. Said we can't go on like this with 38 states and 38 different solutions, because let's be honest. Let's lay our cards on the table. The fact of the matter is these states are creating laws to benefit their college football team. I mean, that's exactly what they're doing. And if you're going to have every state stepping in to help their team at the expense of another team, that simply is not going to work.
Yeah, Bo.
And then and Tony, to complicate things now, you've got the deal. Oklahoma and a couple other states have passed laws that the NCAA, other regulatory groups cannot punish or prohibit. The state laws. Boy, that adds another layer of complication to an already muddy situation. So, man, it's you've got Senator Tommy Tuberville and Joe Manchin, who played football at West Virginia, trying to figure it out. I guess we got the debt ceiling resolved now, Tony. So now next is the NIL.
Well, and here's the thing, guys, and this also came up this week. It's one thing and now they're going up to Capitol Hill. Greg Sankey and the gang are going up there to talk to them. But the fact of the matter is, if they don't get this done, if they don't get some sort of federal situation in place, when the calendar turns to 2024 and the presidential election, you can forget it. Okay, nothing gets done in that town on a presidential election year. Nothing, and they are well aware of that.
Yeah, that's what they're going to call it, SEC on the Hill, and
that's right.
That will be interesting. And I'm sure Coach Senator Tuberville, Coach on the Street, and Joe Manchin. Well, of course, he's West Virginia, but he's friends with Nick Saban. Yep. It'll be a topic of discussion. And Tony, what's crazy? John Hartwell, AD at ULM, was on the show with us yesterday. He made a great point. He said, look, traditional fundraising, Tony Barnhart Family Foundation makes a gift to the University of Georgia because he's from Union Hill, Georgia, and they build a journalism school building. That's there forever. Tony, his children, his grandchildren can go. That is the Barnhart Center for Journalism. But if you give NIL $1 million to some kid after his freshman year, he doesn't like it there and he leaves, that money goes with him, and there's really nothing you can do about it. That's right. I never heard it put that way.
Yep. No, that's exactly right. There's no, that money is gone. And so that's what this is not. People talk about this stuff like it's easy. It's not easy. It's very, very difficult. But something's got to be done. Well, the status quo, the coaches tell me the status quo, we can't survive. We just can't. So,
yeah, it is. Tony, listen, I know you've got a long trip home. You've been down there in Destin, or hopefully you're staying and going to just enjoy yourself. But just hearing your voice is like the leaves changing in the fall. That means I've got to do compliance work, and it's also college football season. But let people know how they can follow you. And again, it means the world to us for you to take time to join us, and really, really appreciate it and look forward to our next visit.
Well, our website is TMG, the media guides, TMG College Sports. We're under the SI umbrella. All you have to do is go to Google and Google TMG College Sports, and you'll see us. I posted a column there on Monday, sort of a big overview of what was going on down here, and I'll post another one on Monday about wrapping up what we did here. So, yeah, TMG College Sports.
All right. Hey, have a great time down there and have a safe trip home to Atlanta.
All right, guys. Take care.
Thank you. Tony Barnhart, just, Bo, one of the things I love about him too, for years, and he still does, he'll come up, John David Badur and Jack Turner and my friends in the Memphis Touchdown Club, come up there to speak, the Memphis Quarterback Club. That's where I first met him. I think that was about 30 years ago. And he's just such a great writer. But again, you are the same vein. Y'all, the thing is, when you work, and I've been in that business, you're up on a game day at 4 or 5 in the morning. Mississippi State's legendary Buddy Martin loves to tell these stories about Bob Hartley, sports information director at Mississippi State, driving and picking him up at the airport in Jackson or the Golden Triangle. And Bo, you've been gone a while, but can you name the 3 cities in the Golden Triangle?
Yes, Starkville, Columbus, and West Point. The
Absolutely
the metroplex of Mississippi.
Here's where, like on the spelling bee, they'll go, all right, for the national championship spelling bee. Well, here's the question on the trivia. It would be, what are the 3 cities that make up the Golden Triangle? And you could get somebody would up there and have a panic attack and say, Starkville, Columbus, and Meridian. See, they always think it's Meridian. It's Starkville, Columbus, and West Point, Mississippi. You got to learn the Golden Triangle. That's when you know you're from Mississippi. And what county is Meridian in? Lauderdale County.
Lauderdale County, right.
That's on Highway 45, what I call the road to nowhere. That's the land that time forgot. That's the old way to Destin. Used to stop in Meridian at Weinman's. They had those big whiskey barrels you'd sit on up there at the bar with the great Cracker Barrel cheddar cheese. God, man, by the way, does anyone listening, and we're blessed to have a lot of listeners all over the place, where you can get those cheese waffles? Remember they used to come in those tubes, and they were waffles, and that was real Wisconsin cheddar cheese. It was incredible. But when Tony's on, when you're on, Bo, you just think back about why we love this game so much, the history, the traditions, the heroes. And when Bob Hartley would go pick up, or you would, I'm sure, carried on that tradition, you pick the people up at the airport. They're Florida people. They're Auburn. They're Georgia. But in your Mississippi State, this goes way beyond the rivalries on the field. And I heard a coach saying the other day, he said, look, man, what we do on the field and competition, that's one thing. But outside of that, we're one team. And you definitely feel that in the Southeastern Conference. Some of these other conferences, the ACC, Clemson and Florida State, nothing against them, but I can understand they're frustrated. But to publicly come out and say, we're carrying, so much of the burden, we feel like we ought to get paid a lion's share bigger than everybody else. Well, Texas did that. That's what drove other schools out of the Big 12 or the Longhorn Network and all. The SEC is all about the Southeastern Conference. Have you had much of an opportunity to be around Commissioner Greg Sankey? I think he's from upstate New York, Syracuse, or as they call it down in South Alabama, Syracuse.
Yes, he was assistant commissioner of the Southland Conference, which is based down in Frisco, and really wonderful guy. He's just the same as he was 25, 30 years ago, and probably you hit the nail on the head too. The whole thing's going to really be an interesting deal. Tony's point about the 3 losses in the college football playoff is very, very coaching, as you mentioned, because you've what story comes to mind. Remember when TCU and Baylor thought they were going to be in the top 4 in the first year of the college football playoff, and Ohio State got in, won the whole thing. But the Ohio State president at the time, who's now West Virginia, Gordon Gee, said, well, we played a tough schedule. TCU played the Little Sisters of the Poor. And the week after TCU won the Rose Bowl, their alumni bought a billboard and put it in Columbus, downtown Columbus, and put congratulations to TCU, the Little Sisters of the Poor. So.
Oh, I love it. But again, that's what makes college football so much fun. The NFL is cool. You're tailgating in an asphalt parking lot. In college, you're tailgating on campus, and whether it's the Grove. And Mississippi State it's underrated. It's that long, it's like Los Ramblas in Barcelona, the long avenue, with people everywhere. But man, I love going down there. Little Dewey's barbecue. Starkville people, I've been to 37 games there, 52 in Oxford. Golly, 167, I don't know, in Auburn. I've been to a lot, not 200. I don't know. You lose track of them, but that's what makes it so much fun is going out there. And those SEC meetings, down in Destin, of course, been going on these last 4 days. It's interesting to hear the takeaway about what's going to happen with the rivalries and all. But, I said the other day, again, I like the 1-7, but I'm like, the more I thought about that, I'm like, again, it was a momentary lapse of insanity. If I was in court, maybe I could plea that. But I go back and I look at 3-6. You've got to keep Auburn's got to keep Georgia and Alabama, and I guess they'll keep LSU, or they'll keep. I don't know if they'll if they're putting Vandy. I don't know who they're going to put on there. We're going to take a break. We're going to be right back with Carlton the Doorman, Bo Carter, Rob Browne on Sidelines right after this. All right, Rob Browne back with Bo Carter. And just to remind you, man, longtime sports information director, I don't call them media relations directors. I still call them an SID because that's what I believe they are in their media relations. Of course, that's all part of it, but it's relationships. And I can remember so many, reading what's on the menu. I mean, even Jim Lampley was with ABC, and then I think he went to CBS, HBO. Jim Lampley would be up there giving scores college football from around the country. And on the menu today at the press box, Jordan-Hare Stadium down in Auburn, David Housel and the crew, Miss Sue, they're going to be having fried chicken, mac and cheese, collard greens, cornbread, and peach cobbler with vanilla ice cream on top of it, and sweet tea. No unsweetened tea, sweet tea in that press box. But you know what? Buddy Martin said this the other day. He said, when you go to that press box up there at Jordan-Hare Stadium, on the wall up in the press box, there are plaques all on the walls of all the great sports writers who have covered Auburn over the years. He said at Florida, there's nothing up there. We've got to recognize these writers. I mean, what we have art galleries where you go and you look at art and you can hear a pin drop at everybody walking around looking at great, Monets and great impressionist painters like him, Van Gogh. It doesn't matter, if you're a waterfowl guy. To me, David Moss, the Hawkman brothers, Jim Keelan, but why don't we have something like that for the great writers? Because the great writers tell these stories and they put it on their canvas, the newspaper. Again, my parents are 88 and 94. They still get the commercial appeal. They like to hold damn paper in their hands. And we got the Daily Memphian and all. You're right. I do too. I'm not some, you can be 35 and be an old curmudgeon or fuddy-duddy. It doesn't matter. It's the people who are well-read. If you looked in someone like Bo Carter's library or Tony Barnhart or Buddy Martin, Doug Dean, man, Ben Troupe. God, Ben's got a great book, Uncommon and Unfinished. People who read a lot are so much more interesting to talk to, because reading is like swimming, running, lifting weights with your brain. It improves your vocabulary. Remember that commercial? People judge you by the words you use. Hell, I catch myself sending a text indenting 5 spaces to the right. It's been drilled into me. Bo, did you know Jack Sims, journalism professor at Auburn?
I never met him, but heard many good. David Housel tells many good stories about him, and Rob, you're exactly right. Going back to the old SEC Sports Journal and some of the, always a lot of fun to read those. Yeah, you probably still kept a couple of copies back in the storage room, whatever.
Ben Cook in the SEC.
Ben Cook, one of the all-time great writers.
Favorite front cover of all time. It was Mississippi State's Magic Man, Marty McDowell, who was from Mobile, by the way.
Yeah. And he just passed away about 3 months ago, sadly. I tell you, he got drafted by the Minnesota Vikings, and I remember Bud Grant didn't like rookies very well, so he stayed for about 2, and then coached in Mobile for about 35 or 40 years. So really, and just a wonderful human being.
Yeah, and incredible wide receiver. Remember the 1980 down in Jackson? My dad and I drove down there with some friends of mine for that game, and State won. Oh man, he just a great player. But that's what we remember from all these great games. And I think the SEC office looks like they've got a stopgap measure in the 24 season to keep a 1-7. But Kirby Smart said the other day, this is the biggest drama and discussion about a non-event. And I wouldn't say that it's as irrelevant as Y2K was, because for 5 years, my company at the time, we were drill, preparing for it. People would ask me about it, and I'm kind of like, well, what is there to worry about? You know, like it says in the good book, worry is a waste of your time and passion. So read the good book. Bo, a lot going on out there in Texas now. You're in Dallas. You've been all over. You've been at the Black College World Series in Montgomery recently. You're out there covering these stories. It never gets out of your blood. Oklahoma. We had Tyler McComas on from Oklahoma City. Norman does a daily sports show 3 or 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. Talked about the impact people in Oklahoma and how excited they are about coming into the SEC. We're going to get back Texas and Texas A&M. What do the people in Texas think about that? I know A&M people aren't real fond of those people with the horns down. And why do people get their panties in a wad over horns down?
I don't know. And tea sippers is what they call they're sitting around sipping tea all the time and watching the world go by. But
I mean,
oil wells.
Nothing against Texas. I'm just saying, if you're a Florida fan or a Georgia fan or an Ole Miss fan, you're just used to being ribbed by your rivals. That's okay. But let's get the general climate, the temperature of the people in Texas about them likely playing each other again every year.
It's the fans are extremely excited about it. In fact, talk about the horns down, Rob. I think supposedly Texas was the one that started the first. All the Old Southwest Conference teams had the symbols, pony up for SMU and the frog for TCU, and a Texas cheerleader started the first hook 'em horns thing at a pep rally, and over the last 2 years. It's been a 15-yard penalty if any player during the game does the horns down. Of course, the fans and the Oklahoma Texas game, there are 49,000 people doing the horns down on the other side of the field. So
I don't get it. I mean, you think Auburn and Alabama fans are out there exchanging pleasantries during the game? Although I've never seen a fight on the field in that game.
No,
there's a lot of respect from those players because they know they're going to work together, live together. There's a lot of mixed marriages. Auburn people married to Alabama and the other way around. You don't see that much with Mississippi State and Ole Miss. That's pure hatred.
Yes, I do. When supposedly the golden egg for the Egg Bowl was invented in 1927 to keep the fans from fighting after and I've seen a few scuffles break out while they're presenting the golden egg to the other team if somebody wins. Well, Rob, by the way,
1927. Correct?
Yeah, 1927, not 2020. Have you heard from our friend the intern in beautiful Mentone, the ski capital of Alabama lately?
He is sans TV, sans communication device. Billy Ray, William Halliday, be back on with us in the fall. He's up there camp right now, Ski Alabama. And my pledge trainer Phil Thompson called me last week. He was up there at his house on the lake up there, and it's beautiful. And that area though is people try to tell me all the time that it's not cold down here in the South. I'm like, why don't you let me take you for a morning bike ride at 5:30 or 6 in the winter down here, or why don't you go duck hunting where there's a rule. I don't know if you're aware of it, but it's automatically 10 to 12 degrees colder than it is in your driveway and 20 degrees colder than it was in your garage. When you get out in a flooded rice field with it, there's always going to be a wind until it's time for the duck hunting. Then it gets real still sometimes. And you're like, well, we got a jerk string. We'll keep some motion. But, I'm thinking about going forward, protecting these rivalries. Tony Barnhart alluded to the LSU Alabama game, the high ratings on that. We know the high ratings on Auburn, Alabama. But then you got Arkansas. Wait till Arkansas starts playing Texas every year. That's going to just – that is one of those, hey, we've got nude photos of Marilyn Monroe that have never been seen before. People want to see that Arkansas, Texas. That is a magical – the Red River Shootout is a magical rivalry.
Yeah, and it's funny, too, Arkansas and Texas actually played in the Cotton Bowl one year after after Arkansas pulled out. And they played 4 or 5 times in the regular season. That rivalry is not quite as bitter. And Rob, you and Tony alluded to the Longhorn Network almost split the Big 12 almost dissolved the Big 12, and they A&M was really bitter about that. And then I loved when Texas was and Oklahoma were coming in, or the first rumor started. The A&M AD Ross Bjork said, "Well, we were promised that we'd be the only school in Texas." And the president quickly said he was misquoted.
Well, no, they said Mike Slive said that, but he's no longer with us.
Yeah, no. Oops didn't want to rock the boat there too. But it's so good to get that game back. It's they used to play Thanksgiving afternoon, Thanksgiving night, and always in crazy weather. You never know, it's going to be like 90 degrees or sleeting, one of the two. There were always extremes on playing conditions. So it's good for college football, honestly.
It is. And I remember when Mike Slive was commissioner of Conference USA, because he would be down every year a couple of times to speak to the quarterback of the touchdown club in Memphis. And then he becomes the commissioner of the SEC. Hell, I spent the night one night when I was in college. We were up in Birmingham over at Boyd McWhorter's house, former commissioner of the Southeastern Conference. That was fun. Man, those stories, there were no tape recorders. There was no phones recording. It's incredible. I'll just say that. Did you know Commissioner McWhorter? I
did. One of the nicest. I tell you honestly,
he was.
He should have really been. He could have been a college president or governor or whatever. He's very diplomatic. Always had a smile on his face. Nice thing to say. And the SEC's had some doozies. Bernie Moore and Tonto Coleman and
yes,
they were laughing. Rob, I think Bernie Moore had the SEC headquarters in like an old. Not the Tutwiler, one of those, but some like the Grand Hotel in Birmingham, and the place was about to fall in. And they, thank goodness, he finally retired, because he was a very successful coach at LSU. When during the Huey Long days down there, they said he really the Vanderbilts and the Tulanes back in the day liked him because he always preserved. He had the first nickel he ever made, so they loved at the end of the year takeouts for the conference, which now, I mean, gosh. Vanderbilt cashes the same check as Texas and Oklahoma. So, I mean, it's kept schools like that. Mississippi State, to be honest, too, the conference has saved their athletics program for years.
Well, and you think it's good because and everybody gets that check. Vanderbilt football, I mean, Clark Lee has a guy on the staff there named Barton Simmons, who was one of those recruiting gurus out there. I think he was an all Ivy League safety at Yale, Barton was. And Clark, did they both go to MBA, I believe?
I think so.
Okay. They're doing things different in recruiting. Vanderbilt won 5 games last year. I'm not saying that they're going to be in Atlanta this year, but they are spending more than $300 million on athletics. I have a very soft spot in my heart for Vanderbilt. My grandfather, Greenfield, his brother, Cadwalader, both left VMI and went to law school, affiliated with the Sigma Nu chapter there at Vanderbilt. And a lot of family, members and friends that have graduated from Vanderbilt, they're like we are. They love it. Of course, Vanderbilt basketball, until Bryce Drew came along, had never had a losing season in their history at Memorial Gymnasium.
That's right.
And Dad, of course, being the architect, goes, "That's the dumbest damn design on that damn who put those, but it's what makes it. It's what makes it Memorial Gymnasium, and it's for it to be seen at a Vanderbilt basketball game. It's the social thing to do in Nashville.
They used to call it the Opera House, Greg, because they had those they built it, I think 6,500 when they built it in 1950. But the architect said, if they ever get good again, we'll add on levels. They added on 3 levels after that. So they reduced the capacity. I think now it's back to 13,000. But they at one time they cut the capacity from like 15.2 to 11,000. They put a bunch of sky boxes in, and they've since kind of reconfigured end zone and some of the nothing crazier than sitting in the third level of the end zone. There it was the original Rupp Arena bad sightlines before they built Rupp, I guess.
Yeah, Rupp. There's people say Rupp has become very quiet now. It's not as rowdy. I think what's happened is over time, as people have gotten older, maybe they've calmed down a little bit. Maybe they need to drink a Jolt Cola or some Red Bull before they go in there or sniff glue. I don't know, but it's not as rowdy as it used to be. You look at the pavilion there in Oxford where Chris Beard's going to be coaching. That is going to be a nightmare place to play. Chris Beard's won everywhere he's been. And I think about the Hump there in Starkville, Humphrey Coliseum, 10,000. They can do it. They've got a great architecture school there at Mississippi State, located right next to the football stadium, Bo.
Yes.
So I think that's going to come. But the bottom line, and we know Ben Troupe has talked about it when he was he's been inducted into the Georgia-Florida Hall of Fame down there. All these rivalries that we talked about, Arkansas and Missouri, I think they felt like, hey, man, we're out here on the western flank. Well, we're all alone. They're not, but I can see where they feel that way. I got a lot of Arkansas friends, a lot of them. They are as passionate a fan base as there is on the planet. They are just and now so many Memphis kids are going to school over there. It didn't used to be that way. It used to be, here it is, that river was like this wall that nobody could get over, like the Berlin Wall for so long. You didn't want to try to challenge the guards. But I go back, now you're bringing in Oklahoma, you're bringing in Texas. I mean, there are 30 million people we know of in Texas. I hadn't checked the turnstile count this morning. Sellout crowd at the border. But anyway, I'm thinking about this, Bo. This is the SEC. The magic of the SEC is this geographical footprint. It is contiguous, which begs me to ask this question. Or as David Letterman would say, to ask this question. Paul Schaefer, ladies and gentlemen, and the band. And do you remember Larry Bud Melman?
Yes.
I watched, by the way, an old YouTube the other day. He goes, let's go out. Our correspondent, Larry Melman, is standing by at the New York Port Authority to welcome visitors. Larry, do you have anyone here so far? He goes, hello, David. No. So, well, we have a visitor. What's your name? Muriel Fuelbaum. And where are you from? And he would take the mic. He would tell us, he goes, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Why are you in New York? To see my children. Thank you. Would you care for a hot towel? Guess what? We're going to have a new part of the show. Join us tomorrow. Start checking in with him briefly. He's one of the coolest guys. Call him Timmy Tutai, Tim Seeger from up in Hardy, Arkansas. He's at the corner right there of Highway 63 and 167 when you cross over the Spring River. If you go straight, you're going up to Mammoth Spring, up into the Ozarks. You go left, you go across the Spring River up to Ash Flat and Mountain Home and Mountain View and more trout fishing. And he's got a gigantic American flag, runs up and down the street. He's got people in all 50 states and several foreign countries that have got pictures of him. He said he probably met 500 people last weekend. It is a lot of fun, but Tim's going to be kind of our correspondent about people in America. A lot of people go through that intersection there. He talks to them, kind of, hey, man, what's going on? Sort of like the old Letterman show back remember when late night TV was fun. But, Bo, we're about out of time. But I got to tell you, the coolest thing about when you're on is I think and Dave Cody said it, I think you know everybody. And it's because you're just a genuinely good person. Of course, your cousins, Jack, John, Elizabeth, Mary, the Turners, great family. But that is why these rivalries and these relationships mean everything. And if it wasn't for you and stoking and building those relationships with all these writers, there'd be nothing for people to remember, would there?
No, and like I said, Rob, having a couple of cold ones out of the back trunk, out of the car, and the great thing, the wonderful thing about the SEC, you got people, State and Ole Miss people yelling at each other, but in the tailgates for the ball game, I've seen people come up, hey, come on over, have some barbecue. They're wearing an Ole Miss jersey, and hey, or people, just like you're saying, the husband and wife for Ole Miss and Mississippi State or Auburn and Alabama grads, like you were saying, they leave it on the field and they just have, and they'll might put a casket in front of your house with an Ole Miss flag on it after they lose.
Yes.
Or one time a guy burned an Ole Miss flag in the lobby of the Regions Bank in Tupelo.
Holy cow.
I think it might have been after that 83 game when the wind field goal away.
That's still
he was president of the next door bank. So
wow.
Thank goodness it didn't start a riot.
Yeah. I mean, again, that's what we love. Listen, folks, been a great show today. Started off with Riley Gaines, Ben Troupe, Doug Dean, Tony Barnhart, Bo Carter, and be back on tomorrow with a roundtable. Buddy Martin. Hopefully Frank Duffy can check in wherever he is. And Bo, I may be calling you again if you want to join us in that second hour with Buddy. And we've got a lot to talk about, and I'll check with Kevin Skarbinski, see if he can join us. But most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us, folks. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. I believe firmly in American exceptionalism, and I believe that your honor is dearer than your life, and do everything you can every day to thank the people that help you along the way. We're all blessed. Let's go out and bless others, man. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for listening. The Hams Beer Bear says it is time for us to be out of here. See you tomorrow.